Okay, we'll go ahead and get started and do the update from the campuses with the sound check. So if downtown could check in with us, Kristen.
Hi, Brenda. We can hear you just fine downtown.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Polytechnic, Keith, if you could check in.
We can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you. And Tempe, you all can hear me, I'm sure. Thank you. And then if we could go to West Campus.
Hi, Brenda. We're here.
All right, thanks. Okay, so I now officially call the meeting to order. And so I want to welcome everybody to our 4th Senate meeting. It's hard to believe we've already had 4 meetings. It's like this semester's really gone by very quickly. So again, I'm Brenda Hoseley, and I am the University Senate President and Chair of the University Academic Council. So we need to establish if we have a quorum. And so in honor of Thanksgiving, we have a question. So on Thanksgiving Day, which of the following would make you feel like napping, taking a nap? So is it A, overeating, B, drinking alcohol, C, consuming a high-fat meal, D, all of the above, or E, none of the above? Isn't that a good question for Thanksgiving? Okay. 62 say all of the above. 3 say overeating. 2 say drinking alcohol. 1 says consuming that high-carb, high-fat diet. And 10 people say none of the above. Well, the D's have it. You are correct. So most people think it's the fact that you eat turkey, which has tryptophan, which is an amino acid, but you don't consume enough turkey on Thanksgiving to actually make you feel sleepy from just the turkey. It's all of those things in combination that make you feel sleepy and want to take a nap. So just to give you a couple of housekeeping items regarding the technology, if we lose video with the other campuses but maintain audio, the meeting continues. If we lose audio, we will wait about 10 minutes to see if we can get the audio restored. If it's not restored in those 10 minutes, then the meeting will be canceled. So nobody, please don't try to pull the technology on us. Okay, so it's time for our informational reports, and President Crow will be here in a few minutes, but while we're waiting on him, I'm going to go ahead and ask J.P. Porter, who is actually here representing our Melinda Anderson, to come forward and talk about the parking and transit services. So he'll give us an update regarding the changes in our parking structures and any other plans.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. Just to give you a few updates. So we're finishing up on our 10th garage. So we're changing out the facilities. So the new infrastructure is in place. The new park system is what we call it. So the access management. And a part of this is you're able to do online validations and you're able to get in and out of the garage a little bit smoother. Right now the Apache structure is the last one we're currently working on. And that's going to be slated to be finished in mid-June. And then we're also going to implement the same technology in the Law College parking garage in the downtown. And that'll be in place when the garage and building open up also. So allow for that technology, validation, and those types of things. We're also working with the new pay-by-space options. So I don't know if anybody know about the pay-by-phone option. So where you can actually pay for parking via your phone with an app, and then you can also extend it. If your meeting goes longer, you can extend it via your phone with an app, so you don't have to run out to the meter to feed the meter. It can all be done on your smartphone. We're also working diligently on our bicycle friendliness. So I don't know if everybody's aware, but Tempe was recognized by the League of American Cyclists as gold level bicycle friendly university. And then we've recently had downtown and Polytechnic campus certified by the League of American Cyclists, and they received a bronze certification for bicycle friendly universities. And then something else just to be aware of too, in the Tempe campus, a part of the ongoing walk-only zone and bicycle infrastructure, we've added, I don't know if you guys noticed here on Tempe campus, a lot more green on the roadways. And so there's these green bike boxes that are in place, which are the first in Arizona to be in place. And then we've also implemented sharrows in the lane, so it's the chevron markings with the cyclist to indicate to motorists that cyclists and motorists share the road. And then we've also implemented a couple of contraflow bike lanes that help the cyclists to navigate through the campus. So those are the few of the updates that I have for you. And do we do questions now, or? Yeah, so if anybody has any questions.
Tempe, if you just come to the mic. Do we have any questions from downtown?
No questions from downtown.
Okay. Any questions from Polytechnic?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
First question, the Pay by Phone app, is that on the Poly campus as well?
It is on the Poly campus in all the pay areas.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I have a question regarding the shuttles that go from Tempe to Poly and back. And it was brought to my attention by my students in one of my classes that actually in the evenings, throughout the week, primarily, not on Fridays, that the buses are overcrowded. And that is, in my opinion, a safety concern. And I just wanted to know if you're aware of that. And if you are, what's being done to mitigate that issue?
Yeah, we actually monitor our shuttle buses hourly. So there's the shuttle bus drivers key in the amount of passengers that get on and off. And we have not seen the overcrowding in the evenings that has been noticed. We do see on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which are the busiest days on campuses, between 10 and 11, we see that there's an increased level activity, and then around 3 to 5, there's another ramp up of increase of students going back and forth. But we are working on a way to be able to transport more students in a better way, and there's more information to come in January. So we're working on something in mid-December where we're going to go to campus to show the new shuttle buses that we'll be utilizing starting in January. So I think everybody will be pretty excited, and it'll help alleviate some of the concerns the students have about overcrowding.
Thank you.
Any other questions at Poly? Okay, if not, we'll
Go ahead.
Can I ask one more about the app? How do we find the app?
Yeah.
So the app is called Park Mobile. So if you go to any of if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, just go to the App Store and then type in Park Mobile, and then that app will pop up. You can download it to your smartphone, and then it's just look for Arizona State University, and then it gives you directions on how you can utilize it. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact the parking office, and we'll be able to walk you through it also.
Thank you.
Okay, West Campus, do you have any questions?
Questions here, Brenda?
Okay, thanks. So we have some people at the mic.
Hi, Steve Dash, School of Earth and Space Exploration. I was wondering if some of the parking garages could have entrances, exits that are for permit holders only, because when people are not familiar with the system, it causes these delays. I've been trapped in the garage and unable to get out for 10 minutes, and I've been trapped outside on game days. I park in the stadium lot, and they're checking to make sure you have permits and can't get in. So I was actually late to teach my class because there was a 10-minute delay outside the parking garage. Can we make some of those entrances for permit holders only?
What we're trying to do is actually make it easier for people to get in and out. So what it used to be is we used to have entrances that were just for permits only and then also for pay areas only. And what we're finding is the pay areas were actually backing up more often than the permit areas. So what we're trying to do is accommodate
no
everybody.
kidding.
And unfortunately for events and those types of things, when there's a lot of people exiting and entering at the same time, any system can only allow a certain amount of vehicles in
I
and
just
out.
have to say that, you know, I work here. This is the only way I can get to work. This is the function that we have I mean, it's nice to make extra money on the extra spots that are in these structures, but if I can't get to my class to teach or if I can't get home to pick up my daughter, there's something wrong with the system.
Yeah, we'll look into it and see what we can do.
And then in university libraries, several colleagues have asked whether there's been any consideration of expanding the walk-only hours, at least by an hour, particularly in the evening.
Currently, no expansion is in forecasted, but that's not to say that's something we won't look into and see what we can do to see. Like I said, the walk-only zone is built for the safety, and we're looking to have that expanded so that it's a safety for all pedestrians. Yeah. And then right now we're working on the time. Seems to work, but appreciate the input and feedback.
Yeah, there's great interest in expanding.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll definitely look into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So if not, we'd like to thank J.C. Porter for his time and coming to represent the parking. So I see Dr. Crow has arrived, so we will ask him to come forward and give his report.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. What I want to do today is spend time talking about 4 things. First, the new 2025 goals for the 3 public universities here in Arizona, and then specifically there are some of those goals, obviously, for us. Second, the budget request by the board to the state's executive, the governor, that is under his consideration right now prior to their ultimate submission of a state budget request to the state legislature, which I'll talk a little bit about. Some fantastic results from the National Science Foundation relative to ASU's relative performance in research funding. And lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about Provost Searle's appointment that you're now all aware of. So first, ABOR 2025 goals. And so it's been more than 6 years since the university set its goals, or had its goals set, its outcome goals, its productivity goals by the board. And so we're coming up now at about 4 years from the 2020 goals. ASU is largely on target, making significant achievements relative to goals. The goals have to do with things like freshman retention, graduation rate, number of graduates starting from community colleges. These goals are linked to our desire to be tremendously impactful relative to the college completion rate here in Arizona, and then ultimately successful to the further evolution of Arizona, both socially, culturally, and economically. And so the new goals, the 2025 goals, are very ambitious. ASU has a very significant assignment. It's one of these assignments that when you look at it objectively, you say, I don't think anyone could ever achieve that. And then you look at what we have achieved in the last few years, and you say, well, we achieved more than that already in the last few years, so surely we can continue to achieve significantly. But there's a difference called the base, where you're starting. So to go from an 84% freshman retention rate to a 90% plus freshman retention rate, to go from a 50% four-year graduation rate to a much higher four-year graduation rate, these are things that are very rarefied in a lot of ways, meaning we will be achieving things in the next 10 years, according to the goals that have been brought forward, that have in many cases never before been achieved. No public university has been able to achieve the kinds of things that our board is asking us to achieve. Now, by the way, it's obviously an iterative process. We move back and forth with the board on these things. And we did end up with a very unusual circumstance. And so how many of you had the chance to pay attention to any of these things as they were being discussed last Thursday and Friday at the Board of Regents? Anybody have a chance? Good. Very good. You're focusing your time on the right thing. It did end up, however, that the university research goals for funded research ended up being larger at ASU in 2025 than at the U of A. Now, I found that interesting because they have a medical school and we do not, and a range of other things. And so if these goals, which have now been approved by the board, if these goals stay in place going forward, we end up being a very significant producer of undergraduate graduates, a very significant producer of new graduate students, a very significant, our research goal, I think, is $825 million. We've set it at for 2025, which will be the largest level of funding attainable by any non-medical school research university in the country. And so, yes, even I get heart palpitations from these kinds of things. And so this is a 10-year goal, so it's not something that is going to be achieved tomorrow. And we have achieved greater percentage increases in our performance in the previous 10 years. So just to be clear, it's not like we've never done anything like this before. It's just that now we're sort of at base camp 3 on the side of Mount Everest instead of base camp 1. And from base camp 3 to the top of Mount Everest, as some of you might have noticed if you went to the movie Everest or if you read Joe Krakauer's book, it's not as easy going from base camp 3 to the top. And so the goals are exciting. We'll spend some more time talking about the goals, and we can certainly get you all of the ABOR documents, or you can get them on the ABOR site, whatever you all would prefer. Secondly, the budget model going forward. So as you know from the legislative session last year, the state is making a less than 15% operating investment in our operating budget in this university. We're right at about 13%, and our models project that to decrease even further as a percentage, even if increases were to be made. So let me be clear about that. So our revenue from other things, from gifts, from tuition, from research grants, from research contracts, from auxiliary enterprises, all of our other revenues are increasing significantly, but our investment from the state has not been increasing, it's been decreasing. And let me put it into perspective. So the model that the 3 universities have agreed to, that the board has approved and has been sent to the governor, is a model that calls for the state's investment in its entirety, every penny, to be focused on Arizona residents. All other areas of university activity, that's up to us. Let's process that for a second. This is a very significant simplification of the rationale for funding in the universities. The way that the model would be argued is that ultimately we would reach a point where the state would be investing approximately half of the cost of each in-state student, graduate or undergraduate, attending the university. We, through tuition, net tuition, would be covering the other half of the cost. All of their investment would go to that, and everything else is up to us. The out-of-state students, the international students, the research, the other activities, athletics, events, whatever the other things are, they all have to be self-sustaining. The state's investment would be on that. The initial allocation or the initial request that we're asking from the governor is, please restore immediately the $24 million that was cut from this university's, plural, budget that was unnecessary. Remember, he had a $75 million reduction for the 3 universities, and then there was an additional $25 million added on the assumption that the state was going to end up with less income. The state didn't end up with less income, so please restore that because it wasn't necessary. Then, relative to the $75 million cut, let's agree to the $7,500 per student. That's about what it comes up to as a state level of investment. And now let's apply that to every net new Arizona student coming to all 3 of the universities. Okay? And then let's go back and begin the process of taking the smaller funding base per student and moving that smaller funding base up for all of the existing students that we already have in the pipeline. So that's the basic proposal. It's very difficult for me at this particular point in time to tell you how we're going to do on that proposal because it's very difficult. It's a complicated political process with a number of super objectives that the state's executive is working towards and the legislature. The super objectives are balanced budget, lower taxes, and a range of other variables. And what we're trying to basically do is to move education investment to a super objective from a second-tier objective. And that's proving to be easier said than done. But nonetheless, I think we have a solid model. All three universities are behind it. The board has approved it, and we believe that we can move forward with very minimal arguing among and between the universities. So here's some good news. So each year, the National Science Foundation, running about 2 years in the past, puts out what's called the Higher Education Research and Development Survey Rankings. So you'll be happy to know that in total research expenditures of 866 colleges or universities that received funding from the federal government from one agency or another, we were ranked 49th. 49th. Historically, the institution, I mean, just in the last few years, we've gone from below 100 to 49th. We are ahead of the University of Chicago, Princeton University, and Brown University. Total research expenditures among institutions without medical schools, 716 of them. We are 9th, ahead of Caltech, ahead of Carnegie Mellon, and ahead of Princeton. Non-medical expenditures. So the second one that I mentioned is schools, total research expenditures among institutions without a medical school. 716, and we were 9th. Now, non-medical school expenditures. So you have, everybody's getting research. You take out the medical school expenditures. Where do we rank? We're 31st. University of Arizona is 30th. We are ahead of Yale and Duke. These are significant, unbelievable achievements by our faculty and our staff and our students. Social sciences. People sometimes think we're like science and technology freaks in my office. No. No. Turns out I'm a social scientist. So my area, social sciences, we are 6th in the country. Ahead of Penn, ahead of Cornell, ahead of Duke, and ahead of Princeton in funding. Political science specifically, 6th, ahead of Yale, Maryland, and Duke. Humanities, funding. Who gets funding for the humanities? In research. 14th, ahead of Cornell, Princeton, Illinois, and Ohio State. Non-science and engineering. Just all things not related to science and engineering. 14th in the United States. Columbia is behind us. UCLA is behind us. NYU is behind us. Penn is behind us. University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is behind us. Are you getting the gist of this? So just a couple more. Earth sciences. We're 5th. Above Berkeley, MIT, and Penn State. Electrical engineering, 9th, above Texas and Stanford. Stanford, in electrical engineering. And this is not a dream, I'm actually here. Engineering, 22nd, total. Ahead of Carnegie Mellon, ahead of Princeton, ahead of Caltech, ahead of Harvard. Funding from NIH, National Institutes of Health, to schools without a medical school. 9th. Ahead of Princeton and Carnegie Mellon. NASA, 11th, ahead of Stanford, UCLA, Texas, and Georgia Tech. Here's one of the reasons that the next one is NSF, probably the most competitive of all the agencies. And there we're 30th. 30th out of 750. Ahead of Harvard. More funding from NSF comes to ASU than Harvard. Ahead of Duke, ahead of Johns Hopkins. And so we're going to make sure everybody sees this little piece of paper here. We're going to make sure that they see it and see it and see it and see it, so that once and for all this notion that a great research university cannot be accessible, a great research university cannot have 46% of its freshman class from Arizona students of color at scale, 40% of all of its students in its freshman class are minority students at 11,500 freshmen, that you can't do those things and also do these things, that would be a fallacy. And we're proving that it's a fallacy. And so these are fantastic achievements, and I'll make sure that the provost gets this to all of you. So lastly, the provost. Very happy to have had the regents. The regents have to approve several of the appointments that I make, and one of them is provost of the university. And it was so controversial that I think it was on the consent agenda. And so there has been very warm and strong support from the faculty, from faculty leaders, from elected faculty leaders, from community leaders and others that Mark is a fantastic choice as University Provost. He has been serving as Deputy Provost, and so in a sense this is a promotion. We did not do a search for this position. I approached faculty leadership, some of you included in that discussion. We talked about this. There was strong support for his appointment, and so I'm very excited. I have ultimate faith in Mark. I've worked with Mark for all the years that I've been here in his various posts, and I could tell when I started talking to people about him that he has the highest regard and the highest respect as a person of honor and commitment and fair decision-making and all the other things that we'd like our provost to be. Now, having said that, we're going to replace Mark's position of Deputy Provost with a search, a national search, both internal candidates and external candidates. And we will call that position Deputy Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. And our hope is that we can find the talent that we need, either emerging talent here at ASU or new talent that we can bring in from the outside to help us to carry the load that the Provost's office is carrying at this very large and complex institution. Let me say one other thing about events around the United States at various universities in the last few weeks, University of Missouri in particular and other schools. We are an institution deeply committed to the success of every individual that comes to this institution. We will take every step to ensure that all of our students and the faculty and staff that support them feel supported, are supported, feel valued, and are valued. And we work very hard right now to do that. Very hard right now to do that. This is an extremely diverse institution. Its diversity is beyond anything that any of us have ever encountered. Students of multiple ethnicities, faiths, faith backgrounds, locations where they came from. I don't know if you've looked around lately at our student body, but it is an extremely diverse group of human beings who are learning together, working together, advancing together. And so what I can say to you is that when individuals within our community, around our community, or somehow associated with our community are not able to show the respect for every individual, to be committed to the open and free discourse that we must have for this institution to work, they are subject to being held accountable for their actions and their words. And so this is an institution also, I have to say, which has a fantastic student affairs staff, fantastic student government leaders. I mean, it's really a pleasure to sit and talk to people and listen and to work through issues and to work through problems. And so people keep asking me over and over and over, well, you know, surely the sky is falling and the world is coming to an end with all these things that are happening. I'm like, no, no. We have lots of work to do, lots of problems to solve, lots of issues to resolve, lots of historical things to overcome. And we intend to do that, and we are doing that. So let me just add that as a last set of comments. Yes.
Okay, do we have any questions for President Crow from downtown?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, any questions from Polytechnic?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, any questions from West Campus?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, we do have a question here in Tempe.
Hi, I'm Dave Wells of the School of Letters and Sciences until we get renamed in January. My own research I'll be doing, I do a lot to try to emphasize the need for emphasizing the importance of education for our state to invest, and I think that's important. I want to get the ABOR goals. I dug into the numbers a little bit, and I'm assuming they were nominal numbers, meant they're not adjusted for inflation. So on the cost per education, the expectation is it'll go up 12% or 11.99%. But if inflation is about at 1.8% for the next 10 years, prices will go up about 20%. So what that implied to me anyway is a staffing model that you're going to be relying increasingly more on faculty whose primary focus will be on teaching and less on research. And so what I'm eager to hear...
You have to explain to me how you make that deduction from the formula you just put on the table.
I sent the thing to Brenda. Generally, because our tenured and tenure-track faculty teach 2-2 loads, and they're generally paid more and would teach fewer students than somebody who, and I'm a senior lecturer, somebody like myself who's on a 4-4 load, that basically your cost, to educate or to produce a degree is higher with tenured or tenure-track faculty than it is with faculty who are primarily focusing on teaching. So that's how I see how that's possible, and that's where the university has been going on a marginal basis anyway. So my interest and concern is, I'm also on the personnel committee, is that we made a good step forward with reestablishing multi-year contracts and so forth, is that seeing that as like one step but not the final step on trying to make sure we have a good quality faculty and good respect overall for faculty as we meet these very ambitious goals.
Right. Okay. So now I understand your question. So I appreciate the interruption. You allowing me to give the interruption. So let me first say that when we think about the finances of the institution, the equation that you gave was the equation for the allocation of faculty effort. And faculty effort is not allocated only according to that particular equation, particularly when you add in the 20,000 online students that we have that have a completely different cost basis and a completely different cost structure to the way that the cash flow works relative to those activities. And then if you add ultimately a successful global freshman academy, which we're only in the first few weeks of its implementation, we don't yet know what the cost basis for that will be, but if it's not so substantially positive that it generates more revenue to come back into our overall reinvestment strategy for the university, then we've done something wrong. And and we're trying not to do too many things wrong. And so about half the university's budget, slightly more than, about half the university's operating budget is related to instruction and instructional staff, faculty staff, and support staff, and so forth. About half is research, other things, auxiliary enterprises, all kinds of other things. And so that's another divide. There are dollars that are generated from the non-academic side that can also be then invested in the academic side. And so, again, the equation is just slightly broader than what you can't limit it just to the teaching load allocation and just to the assumption of so many students and so much growth. It also is the case that in much of our productivity increase going forward will be realized through older students gaining access to ASU through online programs. And so, again, the number of students that we produce through our face-to-face immersion programs, yes, we'll see increases in that. We believe that we'll be hiring more faculty, more lecturers, more instructors, all of the various types of faculty that we have. And so what I can say to you is that we are acutely aware of the fact that, and the steps that you just mentioned, the steps of multi-year contracts for the lecturers, rank and evolution for lecturers, the better definition of lecturer versus instructor versus faculty associate, the changing in the base salaries, which were too low for a number of areas of instruction that were being carried on. Those are all things very high on our list to continue to enhance, repair, and remedy. So we're not moving in the direction of more and more full immersion students and fewer faculty. In a sense, the efficiency or the effectiveness that also comes using that other E word, efficacy, that is high outcomes. We believe that much of our productivity enhancement will be realized through technology in the distance learning environment. What I can say, though, is that to the issue of lecturers, instructors, and faculty associates and their assignments, we're not looking to grow the university on the backs of those individuals. We're looking to expand each element of the faculty, enhance the faculty, and then do a better job than we've done in the past in terms of the compensation model and so forth. I'm going to ask Provost Searle if he'd like to add anything to this. And so thank you for the question. I think it's a very fair question. How are we going to do this, basically, is your question.
Yeah, it is a difficult thing, but I would just tell you as a matter of fact that this year marks the highest number of tenured and tenure-track faculty in the institution's history. We've more than recovered from the recession of 8, 9, and so forth, and we're about 2,000 tenure-track faculty. We have just under 200 searches underway this year just for tenure-track faculty. And so that's a great emphasis because that's part of the whole mix of the faculty we have to have. And so while we have to have clinical faculty, lecturers, instructors in the set, we also need to have a very strong tenured track faculty. And so we're trying to accomplish both those, as Michael was indicating, in terms of we need people in all of the different roles within the institution. And so that continues to be an emphasis. And I have to tell you that even though that sometimes stresses us financially, that's the push that we're making because that's so important to make sure we have the people in place.
It's the most significant investments that we make is the investment that we make in the faculty and instructional staff. So I understand your question, and let's sort of keep at this and sort of see how things move along. But I think we've figured out ways to make this work financially, where we can do a better job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marjorie Baldwin, Economics.
Marjorie, I don't know if people can hear you that far from the microphone.
Is that better?
Just for them, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm not wanting to put you on the spot or anything, but
that never happens to me anyway. So.
Okay, then I won't worry. But with respect to the comments that you made about recent events on campuses nationwide, I think
yes.
we've all been paying attention to that. And this morning, the Wall Street Journal published an op-ed that the University of Chicago has put out a statement supporting free expression on campus. Have you had a chance to review that statement? And I just wondered if you have any comments.
Well, I have not seen what the University of Chicago. We support free expression completely, and so I don't feel we have a need to put out additional statements about what we already support. There may be circumstances at other schools where they have to reiterate things. We have unbelievable elements of free expression on this campus. Just walk around sometimes, you're like, someone actually said that. And so, I over by the Union in particular on the Tempe campus. And so if we should find ourselves in a situation where people need clarity, then we'll offer clarity. But we've been meeting with student leaders. We've been meeting with student groups. We've been meeting with student groups from minority communities and others around the institution. And right now, we don't think there's a lot of, there may be some individuals that think this, but in general, we've not heard that there's a need for clarity. And so it was several years ago when I was asked to sign a letter about issues related to Israel and Palestine, about speech between groups holding interests between those two parties. And wouldn't I like to make a statement about the particular need for all speech relative to Israel to be a certain kind of speech? And I said, I'm not going to say that. We hold that standard for all speech. And so this was years ago. I received some criticism for taking that position. But again, I mean, I think we have the policies, the procedures, the guidelines, the mechanisms, the structures, the review processes, and so forth. But again, if faculty sense this, that there's a need for additional clarity, and we've not heard this from students, but if people think there's a need for additional clarity, then we'll work on additional clarity. So it doesn't mean we won't ever say anything. Some of these things, without mentioning the schools that I've been reading, I mean, I've been reading different statements coming from different schools, and I'm just like, I can't tell what's going on that would lead them to be in a position where they, schools all of a sudden saying that they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars or $100 million on issues related to ethnicity and race. And I'm like, well, you could always just diversify your student body. You could always start there. But
thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Dr. Crow from any of the campuses? Well, hearing none, thank you, Dr. Crow.
let me just say that have a nice Thanksgiving, everyone. I was just talking to someone, and they said they were going to eat so much that they weren't going to walk for 2 days. I get under stress occasionally, and I say that would be fun.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask Tina Thorstenson to come forward. Ms. Thorstenson is the ASU Assistant VP and Chief Information and Security Officer, and she's going to address the question that we had at our last meeting in which someone wanted to know about where we are with the two-factor authentication. I can't talk today. Authentication of our ASU right. Tina?
Thank you, Brenda. How's that? Is that okay? All right. So thank you all for having me here today. And we will talk about two-factor. And some of you might be wondering what that is, right? So I'm our security officer, and I'm going to start with just a brief introduction to where we are from a cybersecurity threat landscape. We'll talk a little bit about what our responsibilities are as individuals as part of the ASU community. And then I'll get into this whole thing about two-factor. And because it's so related, we'll also spend just a brief moment talking a little bit about email security. So every time I'm asked to speak about a subject like two-factor, I want to circle back for a moment and remind everyone here that this is really what this is. It's a security conversation, yes, of course, but it's more than that. It's really a risk conversation. And as we live, each one of us is living technology-enhanced lives. I'm looking around the room here. I can't see all the rest of the rooms right now, but I would bet that we are over 2 devices per person. Because I see laptops, and I bet most of you are carrying at least one phone and might also have a tablet with you. So as we watch our needs as a community involving more technology, and then there's the Fitbits and all the other things that we have, many of us have with us as well. More devices means more attackers are interested in trying to figure out how they can break into those devices. And more devices means more vectors for those attacks. And essentially what this whole conversation is about is how do we right-size the risk at ASU to make sure that we are protecting ASU's data and assets and each one of us individually. Because as a faculty or a staff member or a student here, your individual data and probably those of many of your family members are pieces of data and information that we have in at least one system, if not many, at ASU today. So with each conversation about the risk and security comes down to 3 things. There's a people, a process, and a technology component. And I was asked to come talk to maybe a bit of all 3 today when it comes to a conversation about two-factor. But the people part is interesting because the recent reports show that more than 95% of organizations' breaches have a human element mistake component to them. So, and all of these processes that we interact with have many pieces to them, but the reality is, we're involved in some piece of virtually every process, every lecture, every research. There's a people part to it. So there is. So this is a very important conversation. As we move into two-factor, I'm going to say something, and I know the chief is going to talk here in a little bit, but I'm going to talk. Sometimes it's easier to talk cybersecurity when we think physical security for a minute. And as I've told a number of you, I've got a lot of kids. 6 at my house. They don't all live with me anymore. But if you think about my house and all of the doors and windows that Arizona houses have, my house is only as secure as the last person that walked through the door and locked it. So when we talk about two-factor authentication, you could think about each one of us having keys to one of the many, many doors at ASU. And the first key, the key that we've used most frequently, has been a password, right? And we recommend that we use different passwords for different systems so that if one's compromised, that it doesn't affect the security of all the other systems that we log into. And what we've all found ourselves with is dozens and dozens of passwords potentially, right? So there's a problem to be solved here, and a piece of that problem is this thing we call two-factor. Well, if the first factor is a password, that's something we know. The second factor is something that we have. So the way that we look at this at ASU, and we've implemented this for this two-factor kind of a solution for some of our enterprise systems, and we'll be rolling this out to more again to help us manage the risk. But the second factor is something you have. Maybe it's a cell phone. It's the solution that we're looking at expanding. The second factor could be a desk phone. It could be a cell phone. It could be, if any of you remember back far enough, the mainframe days, a kind of key fob that you can plug into a laptop. It can be a hard token, but it's something that you have. The other thing is, most of us have a phone that is a smartphone, so we can push a text message with a code in it. And that's generally the way most people prefer a second factor. So you could picture it like this. As you go in to log into ASU at some point in the future, in addition to a password, you would also need a phone nearby, in the phone example, to take the code that's pushed to the phone and type it in. Because then we know that you not only have something, you have the first factor, which is the thing that you know. The second factor is the thing that you have. So that's one of the ways that we're looking at protecting the information that each one of us has in ASU systems. And any of you that do electronic banking and many, many other services already leverage something like this. So the solution we're looking at, again, is very flexible. You don't have to have a cell phone. You don't have to have a desk phone. You don't have to use one or the other. It can be a combination of things. And thousands across our organization are already using it to access certain ASU systems today. And I'm sure we'll get lots of questions on that, but that's for, I think, the level setting in terms of what two-factor is and where we're headed. Another example, many of you have smartphones that might offer the fingerprint option now. That's something you have. So that's another thing that we're exploring, but if you think about that, we do not yet have a biometric piece on each one of our devices. So we can't use that exclusively, but that's another alternative for implementing additional measures. Okay, so a little bit about email. Many of you have reached out to the Information Security Office to talk about email. Since all of our email addresses are public, we tend to get lots of unwanted mail. And we call a lot of the unwanted mail spam, maybe. Some of that is malicious mail. And we've worked for the last number of years to continue to increase more, add more layers of security inbound, so that the mail that makes it to you is for the research and kind of the business of ASU, and not the junk that we don't want, and not the malware that we particularly don't want. Because the reason these go hand in hand is that one of the most common ways for an outside attacker, and some are calling them organized crime now. Many individuals in working to find ways into many organizations, certainly not just ASU. But the goal is to get you to think it's an ASU message, or from a friend to log into a site. It might look just like the My ASU portal. Some cases it has, or like another ASU website. And if they can get you to log in, then they've captured your credentials. And without that second factor piece in there, it puts the university at risk. So I wanted to come and share that we're going to be doing more. And if you're finding that you have a particular concern around anything, but particularly email, you can certainly find me or my team at infosec@asu.edu if you have any question about email or any of these other things. The email security solutions we're looking at will please a number of you, I think. We're looking at expanding the security coverage to a point that we are comfortable as an organization emailing health data. Many of you know as HIPAA data. Today we don't allow that information to travel via email because we do not have what we think are the necessary protections in place at this time. So that's another piece of what we're looking to do. And a component of that is something called encrypted mail. And as you all most likely know, we've have the encrypted wireless now available for each one of you with a laptop, open to connect. Encryption is another way to protect our data, and there's two ways we need to add that protection. We encrypt data at rest, so on our phones. If you hook your phone up with a PIN, your work phone, many devices automatically encrypt that way, but each phone's a little bit different. The same is true for our desktops and laptops. There's encryption at rest, and then ASU has covered the encryption in transit part, which is you connect to the internet somewhere, somehow either on the ASU campus, one of our campuses, and if you use ASU encrypted, then it just adds another layer of protection for whatever website you might be accessing or email you're downloading. And before we open it up for questions, I wanted to come back around to this people, process, and technology piece. Because the world is changing and we have more and more devices, and next year we'll have more because so many thousands of these will show up under the Christmas tree and things, right? We are offering training constantly to just help you and each one of your departments spend a little bit of time focused on things you can do or processes you could change to conduct the very necessary research and education and business of ASU in the most secure way possible. We're happy to visit. We also have an annual training course. It takes about 20 minutes. I think it's 22 minutes this year. And there's a little quiz that goes with it at the end, and it's a great way to refresh yourself and your department on this year's security threats.
Okay, do we have any questions from downtown?
Seeing no questions, thank you for the information.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Polytechnic.
Yeah, I have a couple of, it's more of a concern based on where this is headed. I just want to ask, have they thought about these hypothetical situations? For example, a faculty is in, I don't know, someplace in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and he has only internet access, and in that situation needs to access ASU portals and the email and Blackboard, and they don't have a cell phone that works. They don't have a phone that works. They just have an internet access. Have the security office, information security office, thought about how that's going to be resolved. That's number one hypothetical situation. Number two hypothetical situation, and this is what concerns me when they mention the fingerprint, because the fingerprint is something that we cannot change. And if we lose it, for example, if we store it in our phone and it's being lost, and maybe I'm a little bit of paranoid, but it's a concern. If we lose it, what happens then? Suddenly, a lot of information can be accessed through that fingerprint authentication, and at the same time, we will not be able to modify that, let's call it a fingerprint access code.
All right.
Have you guys thought about this?
We have. So on the first question, let me run through the four options just so that we're clear. The flexible options that we have in place today that, again, we're expanding to additional services are cell phone, desk phone, text message, and the key fob, or if you think about a USB kind of size device plugged into your phone, your laptop, I'm sorry, not phone. So the fourth option, which is in place in certain departments on campus already today, would be the solution that we would expect to be in use in a remote or a location where cell service is limited or completely unavailable, but where you have an internet connection. Basically, if you have an internet connection and we have wired your laptop or desktop appropriately, then you wouldn't. Then you would have services as you would expect. Does that help with the first one?
Yeah, it does. It alleviates a little bit of the concern, although it still raises a lot of concerns.
Understood.
What if that gets stolen? What if that that's maybe, as I said, maybe when it comes to security of my computer and my information, I'm a little bit paranoid. But I think that's a good thing in cases like this. And and the second thing is concern about basically personal authentication with fingerprinting.
Yep. So let me answer the second one. When it comes to biometrics and the fingerprint, I was mentioning it as an example that some of you may already be using with your phone. I do it as one of the ways to access my phone, and it's something that some of the newer devices are coming installed with. We do not plan on today leveraging that as one of the two-factor options for ASU Right or ASU systems on an enterprise scale moving forward, but I was using it as an example where you might have already seen a two-factor solution in place today. And in terms of losing a device, that's a great question, or losing that second factor. The solution that we have in place allows for multiple devices in the case of backups or secondary phones, or you can have a number of ways configured as long as they all belong to you. So that helps minimize it. And but then I would close with saying that certainly there's a full understanding that adding a second thing you have to do to log into a system, I mean, we all understand the additional effort in place there, and with that comes some risk, but we're doing everything we can think of to minimize that risk. And when you're given the opportunity to set up the different ways in which you would like to interact with ASU systems in the future, I'd suggest that you make sure you set up several backups.
I agree, and I think it's a great thing that we're thinking about this extra security. That's commendable. It's really good, and I can only think that this is very important because we're an institution that has a lot of sensitive information.
Agreed.
Also, will you tell us your name and your department?
I'm at the Polytechnic School, Cheryl Kristowski.
Okay, thank you. Now moving to Wes, do you have any questions?
Questions here, Brenda.
Okay. Tempe, do we have any questions? Okay, we have one question.
Reed Cartwright, School of Life Sciences. So my question is about the new Dropbox rollout. So I know that you've made encrypted Dropbox available to faculty, but not to students. So I have teaching assistants in my class. So my question is, if I create a Dropbox folder in my ASU one and share it with them, although they don't have ASU Dropbox, they have their own personal ones, is that still FERPA approved or not?
All right, so the question is about Dropbox, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I meant to mention that we just rolled out Dropbox, the enterprise version for ASU faculty and staff. So the question is around leveraging Dropbox with students. And the short of it is that the registrar's office has put out guidance, but I do think we're going to have to circle back around and make sure we have specific guidance on interaction with students.
I'm talking about more my teaching assistants who say need to access grading materials and stuff.
All right, that one's even easier. We're in the process now of expanding the license for anyone who gets a paycheck. So that would cover, I believe, the students that you're speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
So we expect to have that done certainly this fiscal year. I can't say exactly when, but it's in progress right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, do we have any other questions from any of the campuses? If not, let's thank Ms. Thorstensen for coming and sharing with us all the updates that's going on with our technology. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
And then our last speaker is Chief Thompson, and I've asked him to come forward and to share with us any updates about what's going on with the interaction with faculty, staff, and students, in particular the body cameras.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak with you. So about 3 weeks ago, we completed our integration of our body-worn cameras, which I brought one today to, if somebody wants to look at it and feel it and touch it to see how it works. But all of our officers that are out in the field working with the public, which would be sergeants and officers and our detectives, and some of our commanders are issued a body camera. We've had a lot of concerns, people asking questions about them, so I kind of wanted to just give you an overview of how it works and what our policy is on this, and hopefully put some people at ease about this. Our officers are wearing these cameras at all times. They turn them on at the beginning of shift, but that does not mean that they are recording. It's just on a standby mode. It is recording the last 30 seconds of anything the officer is doing. So there is 30 seconds of buffer in this at all times. The reason for that is that they've seen that nationally when something happens, it's not always pre-planned or the officer is prepared to deal with that situation. Sometimes it just happens, it jumps out of a bush at him or her. And if they are able to push the button, a lot of times you miss what was happening that previous 30 seconds to make the officer react in the manner that they did. So what this particular manufacturer did, which is Taser International, is when the officer pushes the button, it goes back in time 30 seconds, and that's constantly taping over itself. So you see what happened in that first 30 seconds. But that part is without sound. So if you see any of the videos from any other agency that's using this same manufacturer, you will see that there seems to be no sound at the beginning of the video, and then all of a sudden sound kicks in. Some folks think that's the police agency trying to redact that. It's not. It's the way it works so that you pick up that first 30 seconds. We've asked our officers when they're going on scene or heading to a call to go ahead and push it while they're still in the car and driving there so that you see any interaction or hear all the interaction. Once the officer pushes the button twice on the front, it's a great big button, starts recording, and they have their interactions with everybody, all that video is evidence. Because we are the government and we are sworn police officers, that is public record, and the officers have no way of tampering with that video evidence. Once it is stored on this camera and they dock the camera into the docking station to charge and upload any video from there, it goes directly into a website called evidence.com, which is encrypted and validated through government criteria and things. And it is stored there. Anytime that there is a public records request for that particular video, the department can pull down a copy of the video, but we can't modify or manipulate the original video. It's always there. So we can pull down the video. There's software that comes with the video cameras that allows us to blur faces, redact out people's social security numbers, any other HIPAA or FERPA protected information, or just personal information we wouldn't want out in the general public. We can redact all that, and that's the version we release. These are water resistant. We've actually seen footage from other agencies where officers have jumped in a swimming pool to save somebody from drowning, and you can see the person under the water, and it pops up, and it's still running, and you have the video. So those are some of the major concerns. The officers do not have these running 24/7. I asked them not to do that. Every bit of footage that we video record ends up being saved to that server, and it costs the university money, and it would be kind of ridiculous for us to be recording somebody asking us where the language of the building is. It's not significant. So anytime we're responding out to a call or we're talking with somebody and it looks like it's developing into something, that's when it gets turned on. So I would want the faculty to know that if they're conversing with a ASU police officer, they're not necessarily being recorded. If the officer is asked whether if the person asks the officer whether they're being recorded, the officer is obligated to tell them, yes, you are being recorded. But they are not obligated to turn it off at the request of the person for obvious reasons. There may be reasons why somebody might want us to turn it off if they don't want what they're saying to incriminate them later in court, which we cannot do. So, but that's it. As these things are stored on the server, depending on the level of the call that we were on, let's say it was a regular traffic stop and the thing went smoothly and there's no problems, no complaints, that will drop off at a certain period of time automatically off of the server. And we're talking like months. If there's some significant event that was recorded, it would be retained as long as necessary for adjudication through a court system. But just run-of-the-mill, if somebody was inadvertently recorded asking for directions, that will fall off within weeks. There's no reason to retain that. So that's pretty much it for the body cameras. The officers will have the ability to review their own footage during report writing. This is not a test for the officer. If he or she was taking a report and somebody said something and the officer wants to go back and review, wait a minute, how did they say that happened or what did they say? They certainly have the right to go in there and look at that particular footage to make sure that their report is accurate. They, on the other hand, do not have the ability to go in and view any other officer's footage that also may happen to be at that scene at that time. So that's pretty much it for the body camera, and I'm sure there's probably some questions I can open it up to.
Okay, let's start here in Tempe. Do we have any questions? Oh, that's unusual. Okay, moving to West Campus. Have any questions?
Yes, we have a question.
This is
Okay.
Oscar. This is Oscar Jimenez Castellanos from the West Campus. This is not a question related to the body camera. I'm sorry, but it is related to recent events in terms of terrorist attacks that have occurred throughout the world, and the uptick in terms of city police doing active shooter training. Do you have any update in terms of any type of training or any type of simulations that you're going through as a reaction to current events?
There are some things that are happening currently. I would not say that they're related to current events. They are something that is ongoing at all times. We actually did train with the Tempe Police Department. Actually, it wasn't this last summer, but before that, with them actually on campus and going through some of the res halls with us and using simulation guns, as well as us training with them down at one of the local high schools. In January, you will see a tabletop exercise being conducted out at the West Campus, and that is going to pertain to, I can't let the cat out of the bag too much because then it wouldn't be an actual exercise. I don't want to give you the test, the test questions before the test, but it will have to do with some reunification in the event that there was an issue. Where would we reunite our students with parents and whatnot, and also walking through the scenario. And then we're also in the process of setting up training with the Mesa Police Department out at at the airport on the Polytechnic campus, because they are one of our primary backups, and we are their primary backup as well out at that campus. So there's a lot of cross-training. We work together well, not just in these events, but as you probably have seen if you've been to any of the football games this season, we have a lot of different agencies that work with us, including Tempe, Phoenix, Mesa. We work well with the Glendale Police Department, have regular meetings with them. So we are very connected with all those different agencies, as well as our federal and state assets, including Department of Public Safety and the FBI and Homeland Security. So we did, as a result of the magnitude of the game on Saturday, go Sun Devils, that game is always intensified as far as security goes, but in light of things that were happening in Paris and Belgium, there was another layer of security that was added in addition to that. Again, we don't talk about that publicly because we obviously would not want people with bad intentions to try to somehow intervene and go around those security measures. So, but we do have a lot of assets in play.
Thank you.
Any other questions from West?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from Polytechnic?
Yes.
Yes.
I have two quick questions. One, is there any outward physical indicators on the camera that it is actually recording, or only by asking the officer?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are outward signs that the camera is recording. There is a green blinking light at the top, so you will see that blinking green. And there will also be periodically, every couple minutes or so, you'll hear a couple of beeps. coming from that. That is also an indicator not only to the person that the officer is talking to, but also the officer, so that they may not see the blinking light, but they'll hear the beeps and realize, oh, I accidentally hit the button, or I didn't intend to be recording, so they can turn that off if necessary.
Very good. And my second question is, you said, certain videos would just fall off after a certain amount of time, like they did give directions would go off for 2 weeks. Who's reviewing this and making that decision?
So when the officer records the video, there is certain information that is put into the system to link it up to a particular case number. So we know what video belongs to what case number. We also have an internal person that goes through and makes sure that those videos are linked properly, and ones that are supposed to fall off can fall off, ones that aren't don't. And we can always go in and alter that if something comes up where we feel that we need to retain this further than what the retention period is, then we can extend that out as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Could you also state your name and which department you're with at Poly?
I'm Heidi McElroy with the Unit of Science and Mathematics at the College of Letters and Science.
Thank you. Okay, moving to downtown. Do you have any questions?
No questions from downtown.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief Thompson. We really appreciate your time, and we need to give him an extra applause because he's on vacation. Okay, that's all our informational reports. So for my chair's report, President Crow pretty much gave you the highlights of what happened at ABOR last week. And so I did attend the ABOR meeting with Melanie Pitts from Polytechnic and Martin Matustik from West Campus. And so the only other thing I would add is that ASU did request that 3 faculty be appointed Regents professors on December 31st. 2015, and those 3 people are Petra Frame from the School of Molecular Sciences, Robert Page from the School of Life Sciences, and Billy Lee Turner II from the School of Geographical Science and Urban Planning. So with our university news, I wanted to share an update. Currently, the university is reviewing learning management system options. So there are no decisions made yet. So some people have already started the rumor that we're already switching to Canvas. So take that rumor off the table. That's not a done deal yet. So if anything, what we're doing is evaluating Blackboard as well as looking at Canvas as a new learning management system. So they did come to our UAC meeting in early November and did a brief review of what Canvas is and did a brief demo. And so the next steps are that they have currently created a steering committee, and as part of that steering committee that we do have representation from the Senate leadership, and that's Donna Cataldo, so she'll be representing us on that committee. And then the next step is we're hoping to convene a focus group in early spring with some of the senators sitting on that to also see a demo of what's going on with Canvas. And then the last thing I want to do is just congratulate Matthias Arfelt, who is our November Senator Spotlight. And Professor Arfelt is currently with the W.P. Carey School of Business in the Management Department here on the Tempe campus. He's been with the university for 8 years. This is his 4th year in the Senate. And when asked, what would you say to your peers who might be considering accepting a nomination or nominating themselves for a position on the Senate? His response was, go for it. Being part of the University Senate is really a great way for the faculty to have input into what's going on at the university, and it's fun to meet new and interesting people. So I would have to concur with that. So with our new business, we currently have 2 motions. The first motion, 2016-24, is a first read, and with this one, what we have is a motion to change the membership for the Personnel Committee, and so what we want to do is add academic professional who would be a member of that committee, so we'll move from 11 to 12 members. so it's for first read only today, and so we will be voting on that in January. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, please contact me. I'm the person that's the point of contact on that motion. And our second motion is one in which I need to ask for suspension of the rules on a second read. And so I'd like to have a motion. Okay, and if I could have a second? Okay, thank you. And so what we need to do now is have a vote on that motion. That motion does not have a debate, but we need to have 2/3 of the members that are here. I know people started kind of leaving, so hopefully we have enough people to make this move forward. So those, if you take out your clickers, and we have yes, no, and abstain. Okay, if we could have the response, Chuck. Okay, looks like 70, so it looks like the motion carries. And so now I need to have a motion and a second for the actual motion now. So would somebody make a motion? Okay, have a motion. We have a second? Okay. Thank you. So the reason that we wanted the suspension of the rules is that due to the timeliness of this matter, we've been asked by the president of ABOR to write a letter of support to send to Governor Ducey, saying that we do as faculty and academic professionals support this new proposal that's been put forth in regards to the funding model as well as the strategic plan. And so you will see my resolution as well as our letter. And so we need to decide if we support this. The one thing that I will tell you that they've been doing is not only have they been asking the universities to support this, but they've also been going out into the communities, asking the Chamber of Commerce's to support this. And really the rationale is to try to make it easier for the layperson to understand why we want to invest in our Arizona residents, because I think it was a little difficult for the average person to really understand the outcome measures that we had in our previous goals and with the funding model, so they weren't really sure what that meant. And I think some people thought the universities already had too much money, but I think when you bring it to the level of it's really investing in our students and that the money's at the student level, that more people are probably willing to accept that. So any questions, debate, concerns? Okay, hearing no questions, then I'll call for the vote. So if you break out your clickers, press A for yes, B for no, and C for abstain. Okay, if we can call for the response. Okay, 77 yes, 2 no, 6 abstain, so the motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, next on the agenda is our CAPC items. And so I'll have Steve Simpkin come forward and share with us about CAPC.
Pretty simple today. We have one curricular motion to be reviewed and voted on by CAPC at its regular meeting on Thursday, December 3rd, 10:45 a.m. in Disciplinary B, room 365. As shown on the agenda for today, it's Senate Motion 2016-23, request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of International Letters and Cultures for the establishment of a graduate certificate in computer-assisted language learning. If you have any feedback or questions on this motion prior to the meeting, please feel free to email me, and please put CAPC in the subject line. Also, please refer to Appendix A for any CAPC information items in this agenda. Thank you.
Okay, and then you'll also see that we have the CAPC consent agenda on the course proposals, and the course proposals, and so that was sent to you on November the 12th. So does anybody want anything removed from that course proposal? Okay, hearing none. So we go ahead and call for the vote. Again, A for yes, B for no, C for abstain. Okay, if we could see the responses. 80 yes, 1 no, 3 abstain. I just love these people who abstain and stuff. So, okay, the motion carries. And then, Steve, if you'll come forward again and look at the consent agenda. So, again, we'll probably need a motion and a second and then vote. So, does anybody wish to make the motion? Oh, no, we can do it after. So, a motion? Somebody? Anybody? Okay. Do you want them to be read first before you make the motion? Okay. So somebody needs to move. And okay. Second. Okay. Thanks. So Steve, if you'll read the motion.
Okay. Well, this is, would you mean just make a motion for the consent agenda?
Yeah, we just made that motion.
Okay. Well, do you still want to hear what they are? Sure. I mean, Senate Motion 2015-1616, request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Department of English, for a graduate degree, MA in English Education. Motion 2016-17 from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of Geographical Sciences and Urban Planning, for the establishment of an MAS degree in Geodesign and Planning. Senate Motion 2016-18, request from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, School of International Letters and Cultures, for the establishment of an undergrad certificate in Modern Hebrew. Senate Motion 2016-19, request from the College of Nursing and Health Innovation for the establishment of a graduate certificate in Nursing Informatics. Senate Motion 2016-20, request from the new College of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences, School of Mathematical and Natural Sciences for the establishment of an undergraduate degree, BA in Environmental Science. And Senate Motion 2016-21, request from the W.P. Carey School of Business, Morrison School of Agribusiness for the establishment of an undergraduate certificate in Food Industry Management and Marketing. All 6 of these curricular motions were passed unanimously by CAPC on its consent agenda at the meeting held on November 19th. That meeting was rescheduled from October 29th because of a lack of a quorum on October 29th. Okay. I don't believe we have any requests to remove any from the agenda. Do you have any requests to remove any from the consent agenda?
I don't think we did. Okay, if we could call for the vote. So again, A for yes, B for no, and C for abstain. We're losing voters. Okay, go ahead and call for the response. Okay, 77 yes, 2 no, 0 abstain. Yay. Okay. So the motion carries. Thanks, Chief. Okay, so we'll move on to committee reports. So we'll just have a brief 1 to 2 minute update from each of the committees. And so University Services and Facilities Committee, Keith, if you could share with us. Oh, I'm sorry, Martin at West.
Brenda?
Yes.
Martin is not here, and I don't have a report.
Okay, thanks. So I think the thing that Martin wanted to report is that we're still waiting on the survey to be approved from the provost office. So as soon as that is out, then it should be very soon. It's approved. Oh, okay. So it should be distributed in the next week or so, correct? Okay. And so if you would please respond to the survey, we would appreciate it. Okay, Personnel Committee, Oscar.
Committee met November 13th. We're progressing on all issues. We are in the process of exploring creating an ad hoc subcommittee to look at issues of lectures and instructors, which refers to David's comments at the beginning of the meeting. So we will update on the progress in our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Student Faculty Policy Committee. Now it's Keith.
Okay, so we had to reschedule our last meeting because of illness in my family. However, we have 5 motions, between 3 and 5 motions that will be coming before the Senate in January. We have a motion for student athletes and class requirements, a similar motion for veterans, active duty military, and first responders. We are trying to determine how to proceed with a motion for alternative dissection, and then there's the motion that I'm working on for, I'm sorry, that was it, the 3 motions. The other 2 are speculative at this point.
Okay, thanks, Keith.
Well,
moving on to Committee on Committees.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for participating in the preference survey that went out a couple of weeks ago, where you nominated candidates for our spring academic assembly elections. There was an excellent response, and now the Committee on Committees will be meeting next week to actually go through the candidate selection process so we can seat our ballot for the spring elections. So thanks again for your participation.
And then our last committee, Arnie, if you would come forward and share with us, or you can sit there, whatever's easiest on the research and creative activities.
Okay, we've met a couple of times. We're still working out some exact issues on how this is going to transform itself into a Senate standing committee, and we have some jurisdictional things yet to work out with OCED. But I would anticipate by the January meeting we'll have a motion to bring forward.
Thanks to all the committees that have been working really hard this semester. I really appreciate all the hard work you put in. So now we move to open forum. So does anybody have anything for the good of the order?
Brenda, we have something else.
Okay.
Brenda?
Thanks. Yes, please go ahead.
Well, thank you. Brenda, it's Bill Youngdell. Thank you. I brought this up at a prior meeting about the suspension of shared governance at the Thunderbird School of Global Management. We were told recently in a faculty meeting by our CEO and Director General that in fact the Board of Regents and President Crow authorized up to 18 months of suspension of shared governance. In the process, arbitrary decisions have been made by leaders. We have tenured faculty. I'm a tenured associate professor, and we have signed employment agreements, I believe, like other senators, saying that we are bound by the BOR and ACD. Yet this has been disregarded, and many arbitrary decisions have been made. We are forced into a position of teaching year-round to fill our loads now, yet we have academic contracts. And I know when I brought this up before, you said you were aware of it. Maybe you weren't aware of the 18 months or up to 18 months. And I think this, or I would hope that this would be a concern. In addition, one of our faculty members raised the possibility of a grievance with one of our senior administrators and was advised not to proceed because they don't end well at ASU. So I'm not sure exactly what we should do. It seems that maybe we have to grin and bear it, but either we are members of the faculty with the rights and privileges and responsibilities of the faculty, or we're not. And the fact that this is happening to us means it could happen to others at ASU. And I just hope that there could be something done about it.
You're here.
Yes, Bill, I was not aware of the 18 months, so that is something that I will take to the provost and have some discussion, and I will get back with you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody and hope you have safe travels if you're traveling anywhere, or eat lots. And remember our question at the beginning as to what will make you want to take a nap. So if I could have a motion to adjourn. Okay, thanks, Arnie. So.